This is a match from a few years ago. My apologies for the poor video quality. Since the original footage was very low resolution, I had to upscale it and rework it to get decent quality. Nevertheless, you get a perfect idea of what exactly is happening. This was a super fight against Maksim Witkowsky. 20 minutes submission only. I weighed about 74 kilos at that time, and I believe Maksim was about 84 at that time, so about 10 kilos difference. The main reason for this upload is to give you an idea how you can use a half guard to control heavier, younger, more explosive opponents. Whenever I do a super fight, I don't care about the weight. I believe both players should always be able to come at the best version of themselves, no matter what the weight is, and it's up to each player personally to either take or decline the fight. The beginning of the match was missing, but I started with a half guard pull and was quickly able to establish an underhook and control my opponent's inside knee. The one thing you always gotta avoid when you are in half guard is to be flat on your back. The reason of this is double. If your opponent cannot get you flat, he cannot pass your guard. At the same time, if you start to stay up and your opponent pushes you to your back, you can use the momentum to flip him over. Once the underhook is established, the main battle for me on bottom in half guard is to keep my opponent's trapped knee pointed to the floor. You will see every time that Maksim, so the white player, gets his right knee up, I will use my top left knee to push his knee back to the floor. At this particular moment, you see me use my top arm to do the same. When I'm playing belly down, it's very hard for my opponent to get a cross collar, and also he cannot get a decent underhook. Every time my opponent pushes me down, I use momentum to crawl deeper. On this particular moment, my opponent could have taken advantage because I used my right arm to pass the lapel, but he could have used his left arm to control my bottom arm, pull me up, and flatten me out. It's very hard to come back from that. These days, I would do that differently by keeping my weight on his posted arm. The combination of the inside knee control with my top knee and the underhook lapel grip is very powerful. The pull on the lapel forces my opponent to rotate his left shoulder up, while my inside knee control forces a right shoulder down rotation. Long story short, the lapel grip and the knee control get my opponent stuck between two rotations. This is my favorite tactic against heavier opponents. I rotate my left shoulder in, my opponent pushes back, and my right arm I use to trap my opponent's both legs between my legs, establishing the Mermaid Guard. At this moment I can pretty much control my opponent indefinitely. I'm not even thinking right now about sweeping or submitting. My main goal is still to tire my opponent out and to break him mentally. He has zero offense in this moment. He knows that and I know that. All the time now, I'm just listening to his breathing, listening when he gets tired, and at the same time making sure I don't exert myself and I keep breathing calmly. This further demotivates my opponent, making it more likely he will commit an error or overly exert himself. There is only one thing I have to watch out for now. If my opponent can establish a left arm underhook, he can keep me flattened out, crawl his hip towards his feet, and then start freeing his outside knee again, and then possibly get a pass. As long as I'm flat on my back, my opponent has the option of fighting for that underhook. At the same time, I can never sweep him, because only from my side will my opponent push back, and do I get the momentum to sweep. You see me now coming up on my side, and actually I do get up, my opponent pushes, I'm not able to flip him over, and he was able to free his outside leg. A minor setback, but 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still progress. And in the whole exchange, I now know my opponent is weak, doesn't really have a clue to pass my half guard, and what I can do once, I can do twice. So now I have extra courage to restart the same game plan. My opponent is now aware that I want to set up the Mermaid Guard, so he keeps his outside leg out of reach. Instead, now I will establish a lockdown on the inside leg. This still gives me great control of his rotation, and it can be used as a step up to re-establish the Mermaid Guard later. The wobbles are used to keep my opponent off balance and keep him pushing over. If I get him over, the underhook gets more powerful and there's more likely chance I can establish the Mermaid Guard again. At the same time, the lockdown could be used as a submission or a sweep as well, provided I get the right reaction. I constantly use my left underhook and lockdown to lift my opponent over, to make him post his hands, for one specific reason. At some point he will push back, and this allows me to lift myself up again. And now the same pattern emerges. My opponent pushes back, and I nearly get the sweep. My opponent again does a great job of defending, but he overcompensates, and now I get even higher, back to my knees, and now he has to push even harder to defend the sweep. Once again he defends, but I re-established a Mermaid Guard and I'm back where we started. Only this time I'm all the wiser and my opponent from all defending is more tired. If not physically, at least mentally, his nervous system gets fried because he keeps defending and reacting to my actions. If you notice, this time I'm also deeper than on the first mermaid attempt. This makes it harder for my opponent to get his left underhook in and also makes it easier for me to gradually now start working my way up again. The mermaid is a bit of a paradox. At one side you have more control, but on the other hand it's a bit more hard to get upright because you have to keep your legs closed. You will gradually see me working now to get a more upright angle. In theory, I can always attack the back here, but then you have to let go of the legs. So the main fight in the Mermaid Guard is actually to come upright, get the push back, and then establish a sweep. However, this time I rushed, my opponent gets upright, I lose total control, so I quickly jump back to half guard. Once again, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. All the wiser. I'm a bit in trouble because I right underhook. I wobble him over, re-establish my left underhook, and the right lapel grip makes it very hard for my opponent to back up. So a little bit of trouble, a little bit of a setback, but no problem. The constant wobbles allow me to keep re-establishing my underhook, and I'm back to where we started. This time the sweep will come easier, because my opponent gets tired from all the defending, and he's pretty much ripe for the pickup now. I get up. Now I'm pushing my left ear inside his chest. The sweep I get over here very rarely works on a fresh opponent, especially with our weight difference. But when your opponent is tired, mistakes come easier, and it was a pretty easy sweep. Now I stay close, maintaining distance, and not allow my opponent to come back up again. And now you can start to realize why I picked the strategy of pulling half guard in the beginning and spent so much time on bottom. This is a super fight without point submission only. Even though I'm now on top, after all this work, if my opponent gets back up, we're back to square one, or worse, if he can sweep me, submit me, or put me in a worse position, all my work is for nothing. The only thing that matters in this fight is who submits whom in the end. And this goal of submitting is way easier when your opponent is very tired. The submission in the past and not my head yet. I want to mostly stay in control and stay on top. My opponent nearly gets on top and I defend well. I realign myself and keep him flat. And now I'm actually baiting him to bridge. I push him away, get control of the second leg, he bridges, and now I step over and go to the most dominant top control position, the Mermaid Mount or the Khabib. The super fight without points really shows you what is the main goal of Jiu-Jitsu. Not scoring points, but total control of your opponent, and gradually wiring him out. I could very easily now sneak up to Mount, but at the same time would lose control of his legs. Jiu-Jitsu is not about points, it's not about positions, it's about control. Right now, I don't let go of the legs. I'm first going to establish full upper body control and then gradually sneak up. This over here is a way better control position than the standard mount. And I'm going to say it for everybody to hear. The standard control positions like side control and mount, they pretty much suck. You always need a variation of a leg right to control your bottom and pin him down. Now I establish the left underhook and my right arm controls the head, so a cross-face underhook. This is a very dominant position. You still see me keep my hip below my opponent's hip. These days, it's very popular to use the keeping defense from mount and go to a leg lock. Not in that day, but keeping your hip below your opponent's hip actually prevents that. And now I have a full arm triangle. I'm going to now rotate my left shoulder in and put my opponent on his side to give more shoulder pressure. I cannot submit my opponent when he's flat, so I keep walking my left arm up, putting my opponent on his side, and gradually applying more pressure with my top shoulder. And my right shoulder presses the head inside. Now he bridges. I still use my hook and my weight distribution to stay on top. Keep applying pressure and wrapping his hand and his arm together. My opponent is only one mistake away from the submission. He needs to rotate away. The constant pressure of my right shoulder actually at this point makes him turn away. And now I get my top side 45-degree angle for where I can submit him. I personally think this is one of my best matches. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think.